I want to congratulate you on your docuseries, Sean Combs, The Reckoning. It's #1 on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like, it's been #1 on Netflix. Did you actually expect it to be as big as it got?
I expected it to be bigger. It's actually exceeding my expectations now.
December 10th, 2025. This is where things get wild. 50 Cent casually reveals he's holding on to 140 hours of unreleased footage from the Diddy documentary, and it's not just leftovers. It's the kind of content Netflix reportedly thought was way too explosive to air. Then a leaked clip suddenly pops up, giving people a glimpse of what got shut down, and it hits hard. Like, seriously devastating. Now 50 is hinting he might just drop everything straight onto YouTube, no filters, no gatekeepers. He's basically saying, here's the footage they didn't want you to see. Same day, same energy, December 10th, 50 Cent is sitting on Sherry Shepherd's couch, relaxed, but clearly up to something. The Netflix show is already making noise worldwide, and Sherry's throwing praise his way, asking about what's next, maybe even a season 2. Then out of nowhere, 50 flips the tone and says he might just upload everything himself. That little smirk on his face, yeah, that wasn't a joke. He meant every word. Netflix only approved 4 episodes, but behind the scenes, there was way more going on. The production team was sitting on a massive stash of footage, stuff too intense, too revealing, and way too powerful to just trim down. 50 even explained it plainly. Everything couldn't make it. It was only 4 episodes. You had to pick and choose things. But what got left behind? That's where things get crazy. That editing room didn't just cut scenes, it created a vault of unseen material. We're talking about 140 hours of raw, unfiltered footage. 50 Cent even confirmed it himself on Instagram after a fan brought it up, replying directly with, correct, 140 hours of footage, making it clear there's a whole lot more that never saw the light of day. Right now, present tense, this footage still exists, and that changes everything. We're talking about 140 hours just sitting there, untouched, meaning someone, most likely 50, still has full control over it. This isn't lost or deleted, it's waiting, and that alone has people on edge. 50 even questioned it himself, saying, I don't understand why he filmed himself, talking about Diddy's habit of documenting everything. But at the same time, there's a twist, because that exact footage could expose way more than anyone expected. The implications hit differently when you realize this isn't polished content. It's raw, unfiltered material that doesn't need Netflix approval or corporate green lights. No legal team smoothing things over, no edits cutting out the uncomfortable parts, just straight access if it ever drops on YouTube. And 50 didn't hold back with the warnings either. He straight up said, the people supporting him will be very quiet when more comes out. And that line alone raised eyebrows. During the Sherry interview, he even pointed to moments that didn't fit Netflix's version of the story, hinting there's way more beneath the surface. Then he dropped something that really made people pause. He chooses to date people whom he knows previously dated someone, and followed it up with a specific example. He has a baby by a woman who was dating Tupac. That's when things started connecting in a different way. The name Sarah Chapman came up, mother of Chance Combs, born in 2006, and her past link to Tupac back in 1995 added another layer to the conversation. 50 paints it like a pattern, something intentional, something deeper. And if that kind of commentary is sitting inside those 140 hours, it's easy to see why some of it never made the final cut. Netflix played it safe. No risks, no deep dives into the most sensitive parts. But YouTube, that's a whole different game. No restrictions, no holding back. One major piece completely missing from the final cut was Kim Porter's death in 2018.
I think it was surprising that he actually filmed it.
It was very interesting to watch a man who's known for his brand presence. You know, he has a really amazing knack for marketing.
She was the mother of 3 of Diddy's children, and her passing at just 47 shook a lot of people. Still, the documentary stayed far away from it, especially all the conspiracy talk that followed. It was labeled too sensitive, too controversial, and her children even spoke out publicly rejecting those claims. Netflix chose to respect the family's wishes, but that left a lot of unanswered questions hanging in the air. The story felt incomplete, like key parts were intentionally left out. And this is where things get intense, because 50 might be sitting on footage that fills in those gaps. That vault of unreleased material could have conversations and details that never made it to the screen. Then there's the Kid Cudi situation, which came up during the 2025 trial and got major attention. The allegation claimed that Diddy ordered an attack on Kid Cudi's Porsche after issues connected to Cassie. Testimony described a Molotov cocktail, an attempted ignition, and even forensic evidence being discussed. But again, Netflix toned it down, keeping that storyline minimal due to lack of confirmed proof and legal concerns. Still, if 50 decides to release those witness accounts, everything could hit differently. And here's another twist. The long-running feud between 50 Cent and Diddy, nearly 20 years deep, didn't get a single mention in the documentary, not one. 50 kept it professional on the surface, making sure the focus stayed on the serious allegations instead of turning it into a personal attack. Going too hard on his own history with Diddy could have made the whole thing look biased, like a straight-up hit piece, and that would have hurt the credibility fast. Netflix pushed for that clean, objective tone, keeping everything controlled and carefully presented. But YouTube doesn't play by those same rules. There's no demand for balance or restraint in the same way. And that's where things could shift, because the personal history between them might actually explain why 50 has been so locked in on this for years. He even said it himself in interviews. For 20 years, it's me being uncomfortable with him, and added moments that raised eyebrows like suggesting that he takes me shopping. That tension didn't come out of nowhere. It's been building for a long time, and none of that context made it into the documentary. Then there's the Tupac angle, which the documentary touched on but didn't fully explore. It included Keith D's confession, but stopped short of going deeper into the bigger picture. Meanwhile, there's talk of more footage, extra witness statements, possible money trail details, and layers of the story that never got unpacked. Netflix chose caution, keeping distance and avoiding legal risks. But those 140 hours sitting unreleased, that's where the material gets way too intense for corporate comfort and way more revealing if it ever comes out. Netflix had to make cuts, tight timelines, strict pacing, and constant decisions about what moves the story forward and what gets left behind. Every scene had to fit a clean narrative, even if that meant leaving out major details. But YouTube, that platform doesn't care about episode limits or structure. You can go as deep as you want, for as long as you want, no restrictions. Take the white parties, for example, completely skipped over. These events ran from 1998 to 2009 and pulled in huge names like Justin Bieber and Leonardo DiCaprio. All white dress codes, over-the-top setups with stilt walkers and pool swings. It looked glamorous on the surface, and Diddy's representatives have always said nothing inappropriate ever happened at those parties. But the real question people keep asking is simple. What does the footage actually show? Then there's Cassie's testimony from the 2025 trial, which brought a whole different level of intensity. Over 4 days, she shared emotional claims about alleged abuse, pressure, and being recorded without consent. She described taking substances to mentally disconnect during certain situations, and that testimony became a major part of the case. But none of that made it into Netflix's version. Too recent, too sensitive, and way too complicated legally. Still, those trial transcripts are public record sitting there for anyone to examine. And on YouTube, that kind of material can be discussed more freely without the same filters or corporate hesitation. It opens the door to a more detailed breakdown of testimony connected to serious charges in the case. Even the footage Netflix did use has its own story. It came from Diddy's videographer, Michael Ober-Lee, who later said a third party leaked it while he wasn't even around. That detail alone raises eyebrows and adds another layer to how all this material ended up being seen at all. Every storyteller should uphold, Ober-Lee stated. And that line hit hard once the situation started unfolding. Diddy's team didn't stay quiet either. They fired back with cease and desist letters, calling the documentary stolen footage, claiming it was never cleared for release, and even threatening lawsuits worth billions. That kind of reaction says a lot because Netflix didn't back down at all. They stood firm, saying everything was legally obtained, and that clash alone shows just how explosive this material really is. And this might only be the surface. Even the footage that did make it into the documentary already shifted public perception.
Look, if I didn't say anything, you would interpret it as the hip-hop is fine with his behavior.
There were moments showing Diddy asking for someone tied to the dirtiest of dirty business to help with propaganda, plus small but telling details, like requesting hand sanitizer right after hugging fans in Harlem. Those clips pulled back the curtain, showing a gap between the public image and private behavior. But here's the real tension. There are still 140 hours nobody has seen. That means testimonies that were cut for time, claims considered too sensitive, and connections that needed way more context than 4 episodes could handle. Details like the full story involving Sarah Chapman and Tupac, or a deeper breakdown of the Kid Cudi car incident were all limited or left out due to legal risks. And 50 already warned it clearly. The people supporting him will be very quiet when more comes out. 50 didn't frame it like a threat. He made it sound like a promise. And that's what makes it hit harder, because this isn't about streaming deals or polished edits anymore. This is about direct access, raw footage, and unfiltered reality. YouTube plays by a completely different set of rules. No corporate pressure, no layers of approval, no executives worrying about backlash. Just press upload and let the public see everything for themselves. December 10th, 2025 could end up being a turning point. The moment where documentaries stop being tightly controlled productions and start becoming open conversations between creators and the audience. Because if those 140 hours really drop, that's not just extra content. That's a full archive of unseen material available to anyone with an internet connection. And right now, 50 is the one holding all of it. This isn't a trimmed-down version or a carefully edited storyline. This is the full picture, unedited, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore once it's out. Ready to answer the questions that never got addressed. Ready to fill in the gaps that 4 episodes couldn't cover. The vault is real, the footage is real, and 50 has made it clear through interviews and posts that he's not done with this story. Because this doesn't end with Netflix's version. It keeps going until everything is out there, until every detail gets looked at, every claim gets examined, and every piece of footage finally sees the light. And that smirk he gave on Sherry's couch, that said more than words ever could, he knows exactly what he's holding, and he knows what happens if it all gets released. And soon, people might finally see everything for themselves. Because what Netflix released, that was only what they could show. The rest was reportedly too intense, too risky, and way too explosive to include. December 1st, 2025, just one day before the documentary dropped, things escalated fast. Sean Combs' legal team sent out a cease and desist letter pushing for immediate action to stop certain footage from being released. We're talking about private recordings from just 6 days before his arrest, including conversations with his own attorney, real strategy sessions that were never meant to be public. But Netflix didn't back off. They moved forward anyway, and that decision alone raised the stakes big time. Now here's where it takes another turn. The same footage being called stolen by Diddy's team, they claim it actually came from a documentary project he started himself years ago, not recently, way back when he was just 19 years old. That means decades of self-recorded material, major life moments, private talks, business moves, all documented by him. He was building his own narrative from the beginning, trying to control how his story would be told. But now, that same footage is being used in ways he never expected, and it's putting everything under a completely different spotlight. The twist? He never finished that project, and now Netflix has the footage. That's where everything starts to feel messy, because material that was meant to stay controlled suddenly isn't anymore. A spokesperson stepped out quickly and made it clear. We have confirmed that Netflix used footage that was never authorized for release, including private moments, pre-indictment material from an unfinished project, and conversations involving legal strategy that were not intended for public viewing. That statement alone raised serious questions about what's really in those clips. So what are these private moments they're trying to keep hidden? According to Diddy's team, it includes scenes of him alone in a hotel room, personal phone calls with his children, and moments where he appears vulnerable, dealing with fear and anxiety caught on camera. This is the side of him the public rarely, if ever, gets to see, and it's something he reportedly worked hard to keep private. One moment stands out in particular. It shows him sitting in a vehicle after meeting fans, recorded on September 10th, 2024, just 6 days before federal agents arrested him in Manhattan. That timing alone adds a whole new level of intensity to what's being shown. The investigation was already in motion, and he reportedly knew serious charges could be coming. So he kept documenting everything, every move, every conversation, building what he likely believed would support his side of the story. It wasn't just casual recording either. This included planning, strategy, and material meant to shape how events would be seen later. And the legal conversations, those stand out even more. There are mentions of phone calls with his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, where media perception and public image were being discussed.
And so here in the case, we'd like to take a little bit more time and focus on some of the things that the jurors saw and heard. So we want to talk about the evidence of Kid Cudi's car. Leather lined with gasoline, luxury, cayenne-colored seats coated black with ash.
That's where things get complicated fast, because now the question shifts to attorney-client privilege and whether any of this should have ever been seen. Diddy's team hasn't made a direct claim on that point, and that silence feels intentional. Because if a third party was involved in filming, and if that third party actually owns the footage, then privilege isn't so clear-cut anymore. That gray area changes everything. Their argument leans heavily on this being unfinished documentary material, collected over decades, starting when he was just 19. The idea was always full control, his story, told his way. But the project was never completed before his arrest, and that's exactly where the situation gets tricky. Now Netflix is stepping into that gap, and one line from the statement says it all. No rights were ever transferred to Netflix. According to Diddy's lawyers, this footage was never meant for what it's being used for now. They say it was created under a completely different arrangement, one that was never even finished. But here's where things start to get complicated fast. The freelancer who actually filmed parts of this material reportedly had physical possession of it, and if payment was never completed, that could shift control in a major way. Then came December 1st. The timing couldn't have been tighter. Just hours before the Netflix premiere, the cease and desist letter dropped, and the tone was serious. Mr. Combs has not hesitated to take legal action against media entities and others who violate his rights, and he will not hesitate to do so against Netflix. That line was meant to send a message loud and clear. But Netflix didn't back down, not even a little. And that raises the obvious question. Why didn't it work? The reality is, Netflix operates on a completely different level. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company with entire legal teams reviewing every second of content. Every clip, every image, every detail goes through strict clearance before anything is released. They don't take risks without being prepared for the consequences. And this isn't the first time this kind of legal move has come up either. Earlier in 2024, Diddy filed a $100 million lawsuit against NBC Universal over the documentary Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy, which aired on Peacock. That case is still ongoing, and it shows a pattern of pushing back hard against media portrayals he disagrees with. Diddy has taken legal action before when documentaries drop, but Netflix is a whole different level. Bigger budget, stronger legal teams, and way more resources to fight back. This isn't the same situation as smaller platforms. Netflix comes prepared, and they don't move unless they believe they're fully covered. And here's the key issue that keeps coming up. If you hire someone to film content but never complete payment, never finalize the contract, and never secure the rights, that footage may legally stay with the person who actually recorded it. That detail could flip the entire situation upside down. Diddy's team pushed back hard, calling it fundamentally unfair and illegal for Netflix to use material like this, arguing that his own life's work is being turned against him. Decades of self-documentation, originally meant to shape his story, now being used in a completely different way. But in court, it's not about what feels fair. It's about ownership and rights. That's what everything comes down to. And the scale of what was recorded, it's massive. From the age of 19, nearly every major moment was captured. Studio sessions, parties, business deals, conversations with artists and executives, personal relationships, arguments, celebrations, and more. It's a full archive of a life lived on camera. The idea was control, capture everything, shape the narrative later. But now, instead of protecting him, that same footage could end up doing the exact opposite. And then, 50 Cent stepped in and confirmed what a lot of people were already suspecting. There was way more footage than what made it into those 4 episodes. Way more. That means a huge amount of material is still sitting somewhere, unseen and untouched, just waiting. Some people even started questioning if Netflix held certain parts back on purpose, not because they didn't have it, but because some topics were just too sensitive, even for their legal team to handle safely. That idea alone raised eyebrows. December 2nd, the documentary officially dropped. And at that point, the situation changed completely, because no matter how many threats were made, the footage was already out there. Millions of people had seen it, and there was no taking it back. Then on December 10th, Michael Oberle stepped forward, identifying himself as Sean Combs' documentarian. He revealed he had been working on a project about him for over 2 years. But here's the twist. He made it clear that he wasn't the one who released the footage. The footage in question was not released by me or anyone authorized to handle Sean Combs' materials, he explained. According to him, it all came down to timing. A third party filled in for just 3 days while he was out of state, and that was enough. 3 days for decades of recorded material to slip out of control. But he also added one more key detail. This situation had nothing to do with any payment dispute or contract issue, which only makes the whole situation even more complicated. So if it wasn't about money, then what was it really about? Oberle called it unethical, saying the footage was taken from a project meant for one purpose and used to push a completely different narrative. But here's the part that changes everything. Legally, Netflix still cleared it. Teams of lawyers went over every single frame, and since a third party had possession, the transfer checked out on paper. Now it's no longer hidden, it's public, and it's everywhere. Combs' team keeps repeating the same move, threatening lawsuits just like the $100 million case against NBC Universal that's still unresolved. The pattern is clear. Push back hard, threaten legal action, try to control the narrative. But this situation feels different because this isn't built on outside claims or secondhand accounts. This is footage that reportedly shows his own words, his own strategy, and moments that hit much closer to the source. There are references to him saying he needed someone that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business to influence public perception. And that line alone caught attention, because now it's not about interpretation. It's about what people believe they're hearing directly. The irony stands out. Years of recording, all meant to shape a legacy, may have ended up exposing a version of events he never planned to show. Private conversations, tense moments, and discussions about handling media pressure, all captured on cameras he chose to have around. When Netflix released the documentary on December 2nd, it spread fast. Millions watched, clips circulated everywhere. And once something like that is out, there's no pulling it back. Legal threats don't erase what people have already seen. Even the cease and desist letter tried to make it personal, naming Ted Sarandos and referencing family legacy as if that pressure would force Netflix to step back. But it didn't work, and the footage stayed out in the open. They didn't back down, and the reason is simple. When someone is dealing with serious legal battles, facing multiple civil cases, and watching their situation get more complicated, their leverage starts to shrink fast. The threats don't carry the same weight anymore, and the pressure tactics lose impact. And that long-running documentary project, the one that started when he was just 19, meant to build a legacy, has now flipped into something completely different. Instead of shaping the story, it's become part of the story itself. The same footage meant to protect an image is now being used in ways that were never planned. It all comes down to that unfinished arrangement. The material was created under a deal that was never fully completed, and the person who physically had it ended up holding real power. Once that agreement broke down, control shifted, and now that footage is tied to a narrative he never wanted out in the open. His legal team can keep filing motions, but Netflix isn't pulling anything back. The documentary is still streaming, still being watched, and still spreading, because once something reaches that level, it's almost impossible to contain. And just when it looked like that was the peak of it, something even bigger started building. December 11th, 2025, 50 Cent's project explodes globally, pulling in around 40 million views in just 2 weeks. But here's the twist nobody expected. While all that attention was on Netflix, 50 was already sitting on 140 hours of unused footage. And he's not bringing it back to any network. He's aiming straight for YouTube. No oversight, no filters, and no holding back if it ever drops. This isn't just round 2. This feels like the nuclear option. The Netflix documentary only showed a controlled version of events. 4 episodes, heavily reviewed, carefully edited, and shaped by legal teams watching every second. Anything too intense, too graphic, or too risky got cut, and time limits forced even more to be left behind. But YouTube? That's a completely different arena. No network executives, no strict content filters deciding what stays or goes. No corporate layers stepping in to clean things up. It's just raw material, receipts, testimony, and whatever 50 decides to put out there. That shift alone changes everything, and the impact could be massive. Netflix operates with rules. They have a brand to protect, investors to answer to, and standards they can't ignore. Every move is calculated, but YouTube doesn't function the same way when it comes to user uploads. The barriers are lower, and the control is minimal in comparison. Then there's the access factor, and this is where things really open up. Netflix sits behind a paywall, meaning not everyone gets to see what's released. But YouTube, it's free and instant. Anyone, anywhere, can click and watch without restrictions. If that 140 hours ever goes public on a platform like that, the reach wouldn't just be big. It would be everywhere all at once. Then comes the second factor, shareability. And this is where things really take off. Netflix content mostly stays inside its own platform. But YouTube, that's a whole different story. Videos spread fast. Clips get pulled, remixed, reposted, and discussed everywhere. From X to TikTok, once something catches attention, it moves quick and reaches way beyond the original upload. And the third point might be the biggest one. Control. 50 Cent would be in charge of everything. The timing, the edits, what gets shown, and what stays hidden. It's all on his terms. Netflix runs on schedules, approvals, and planning. YouTube runs on whatever timeline he decides. He could drop all 140 hours at once or release it piece by piece, building momentum over time. Even moments from the Netflix documentary, like when Diddy greets fans in Harlem and then asks for hand sanitizer, those were already toned down for a wider audience. That was the cleaned up version. What 50 is hinting at for YouTube sounds completely different. Through G-Unit Film and Television, this could be released independently. No corporate partner, no outside control, and no limits on what gets shown. This is 50 Cent moving completely on his own. with full control over content that could reshape how people look at the entire bad boy era. No filters, no outside influence, just his decisions guiding what gets released and when. And from the way he's talking, it sounds like he's ready to deal with whatever comes next. Because here's the reality. If what he has includes verified material, credible witness accounts, and documented evidence, that changes the conversation. Truth can be a powerful defense, especially if the content lines up with what's already been established publicly. So the question becomes, what options does a legal team really have when reacting to something like that, especially when the material is already out or about to be released? That uncertainty is what's getting people's attention. The producer has already hinted that what didn't make it into the Netflix version is on another level. He's talking about content that could shut everybody up, including details that even people close to Diddy might not have expected. Claims, accounts, and moments that were considered too intense for a mainstream platform trying to stay within safe boundaries. There's also mention of witness testimonies that weren't used during the trial, not because they lacked credibility, but because they weren't necessary for the charges being pursued. That leaves open the possibility that there's more context still unseen. For years, people brushed this off as a long-running feud. Two major figures going back and forth, but 50 has consistently said it's deeper than that, about accountability, not just personal issues. The Netflix documentary touched on parts of the story, like Keith D's confession, mentions of Eric Von Zip, and discussions around alleged financial connections, but it only scratched the surface compared to what might still be out there. What the documentary didn't show is what's really getting people talking. The deeper side of certain figures, the full scope of alleged involvement, and details that go beyond what made the final edit. There are claims about financial records, conversations, and people who say they witnessed key moments or heard things firsthand about what was happening behind the scenes. The emotion tied to all of this is still strong even after all these years. The events go back decades, and 50 is reportedly sitting on hours of additional testimony that could paint a much more detailed picture of what happened on September 7, 1996. That's the kind of material people feel could shift how the story is understood. There are also mentions of deeper connections, different groups, rival circles, and industry ties that weren't fully explored in the Netflix version. According to what's being suggested, those remaining hours may include discussions and accounts that go further into those relationships and tensions at the time. And then there's Suge Knight, who was there that night in Las Vegas. He survived, while Tupac didn't, and that alone keeps attention on anything he might have said or recorded later. There are even claims about a conversation behind the House of Blues while Tupac was still alive. If tensions were as serious as people believed, then moments like that raise questions. Different versions of what happened, what was said, and what followed could reshape how people view that entire era. And if there really is unseen interview footage that didn't make the cut, it adds even more curiosity about what's still out there waiting to be revealed. Raw, unfiltered, and potentially hard to ignore. That's the kind of material people believe is still out there. Kirk Burroughs reportedly knew something wasn't right. The expectation was clear. Biggie wasn't supposed to leave New York. Big ain't going nowhere, he told people earlier that week. But by Saturday, everything changed, and Biggie was gone in Los Angeles. That shift alone raised serious questions that still haven't been fully answered. The Netflix documentary did show parts of Burroughs' journals, his detailed notes from inside Bad Boy, but only small pieces made it in, just excerpts, trimmed down to fit the 4-episode format. But there are claims that 50 has access to much more. Full journal scans, complete records of conversations, decisions, and warnings that may not have been fully addressed. Then there's Wolf Jones, who handled security for Bad Boy from the early days. Not just security, he was also one of the original financial backers. And according to what's been said, he refused to go to Los Angeles without proper protection in place. When someone responsible for safety is raising concerns like that and feels unheard, it naturally leads people to question what was happening behind the scenes. And then it goes even further. There are serious claims tied to Wolf Jones, including accusations that his death was connected to decisions made at the time. That's a heavy topic, and people are saying 50 might have access to a much fuller version of that story, complete with accounts from individuals who were close to the situation. If that kind of material is real and ever released, it would definitely draw major attention. Then the focus shifts to more personal and difficult allegations, claims that move beyond business and into deeply sensitive territory. Aubrey O'Day spoke about the long-term emotional impact in her interview, describing how the experience stayed with her over the years. Still processing, still trying to make sense of what she went through. The affidavit mentioned in the documentary described a witness account involving her being unconscious during an alleged incident. She has said she doesn't remember it clearly, and isn't sure she wants to revisit it, which adds another layer to the situation. That kind of uncertainty and hesitation often reflects something deeper, experiences that are difficult to fully process, especially when they become part of a public conversation. That moment of self-forgiveness she described didn't happen overnight. It came after years of trying to process something she didn't fully understand at the time. That's what made her part in the documentary stand out. The Netflix version showed her reading from an affidavit describing an alleged assault, but there are claims that more material exists. More accounts, more witnesses, and more documentation tied to what allegedly happened at those events. If 50 really has access to additional testimony from others who say they experienced or witnessed similar situations, that could bring even more attention to the topic. Situations like this often lead to more people speaking up, especially when new information starts circulating. And this is where YouTube changes everything. Unlike streaming platforms where content can be rotated or removed over time, YouTube has a different kind of staying power. Once something gains traction, it spreads fast and sticks around. Clips get shared, reposted, turned into short-form videos, and discussed across every platform. It doesn't just disappear, it becomes part of the online conversation. The Netflix documentary already reached millions in a short time, but a viral YouTube release that operates on a completely different scale. It can reach far beyond that, with people analyzing every detail, every frame, and every statement. And knowing that possibility exists, that there may be more unseen material still out there, keeps the pressure high, especially with ongoing legal and public attention surrounding everything connected to the case. All of this could keep shifting public opinion even further. Right now, he's serving time, with a reported release date set for May 2028 if everything runs its course. That leaves years of uncertainty, time where anything could surface at any moment. Every day carries that question. Is this when something new drops? Because if 50 really has that much unreleased material, it puts a lot of attention on what could come next. The idea that more footage or accounts might appear keeps people watching closely, wondering what else could be revealed. From a legal angle, things get complicated. If material was obtained and used within legal boundaries, stopping its release becomes much harder. There are limits to what can be taken down, especially if it doesn't violate platform rules or established rights. And without a major company controlling the rollout, there's less external pressure that can be applied. There's also a broader point people bring up about agreements like NDAs. In general, contracts can't be used to block people from speaking about unlawful activity, which is why situations like this often lead to more voices coming forward over time. And if names, accounts, or detailed claims start appearing in a widely accessible space like YouTube, that attention can grow fast. Once that kind of content spreads, it doesn't just stay in one place. It becomes part of a much bigger public conversation. This is the kind of situation that could end careers fast. We're talking about serious consequences, lawsuits, reputational damage, and possible legal trouble for anyone connected to alleged wrongdoing. That's why the silence from others in the industry stands out so much. Because when the stakes are this high, speaking up or staying quiet both come with pressure. Once information like this becomes public, there's no easy position to take. Reactions get analyzed, past connections get questioned, and everything starts getting looked at more closely. December 11th, 2025, still no official release date, nothing confirmed. But the one thing everyone keeps coming back to is this. 50 Cent is reportedly sitting on 140 hours of unreleased footage. And across the industry, people are watching closely because they believe something could drop at any moment. It's not a question of if anymore, it's when and how big the impact will be when it finally happens. If you've been following this closely, make sure to like, subscribe, share this with others, and drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is far from over.